Did I finish 14 books in the month of September, or did 14 books finish me? That is the question. In the month of September, I read 14 books, which equals to 4,007 pages and 87 and a quarter hours of audiobooks. Probably one of my biggest book reading months for the year, and let's discuss it. Let's go over everything of my thoughts, my feelings, and whether I recommend the books or not. So let's get straight into it, shall we? I have my laptop, so if you see me looking down, that is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my story graph, which is linked in the description, same with my Goodreads. The first book that I read for the month was Mixed Singles by B.K. Borison. First things first, I loved First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. It was one of my favorite books. I sobbed my eyes out reading that book. So I was super excited to get into their other work. I started off with Mixed Singles. I didn't know it was the third part of an interconnected series of interconnected standalones, and I was a little bit disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. I rated it 2.75 stars. I love interconnected standalones. They are my jam. They are my favorite things to read in terms of rom-coms. And you will see in what I read a lot of them. I definitely did myself a disservice, and I did this book a disservice. Interconnected standalones are still meant to be standalones. You are still able to read them without reading the other series. I'm a stickler for reading them in order. I just didn't realize that this was the third one, and I went into it knowing nothing about the series, knowing nothing about the previous characters, and I really felt like I was so out of the loop with what was going on. She was able to explain a lot of different things really well, but I was really disappointed. It was 2.75 stars. Like my 3-star rating is like, yeah, it was okay, didn't love it, didn't hate it, it was fine. It was just under that. It was more like, didn't really like it because it was just so hard to get into. I was still, based off of what I think about interconnected standalones, I was still meant to be able to enjoy this book, and it just didn't. The characters felt really forced, like they were the only two characters left in this small town romance town, and they just had to get together because no one else was available. But I am interested in maybe I would like this better if I had actually read this in order that it was meant to. I was a little bit disappointed, not gonna lie. So we didn't start off the month great, but then we went into maybe one of my favorite books for the year was A Dance of Lies by Brittney Arena. This was a 5-star read for me. You start off with the female main character. She is in jail, and she's been in jail for a couple of years, and she was a dancer for the king. And due to something that happened, and due to this big, all of the kingdoms coming together, she is let out of jail, and the king sends her on a mission. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the storyline was really important. She does have chronic illness based off of her time in jail. She's just acquired some injuries, so she has to navigate through that. I knew she was a dancer going into it. I didn't realize how much dance would be involved, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the story and about how moving her body really is important to her and to the storyline. So I really enjoyed that aspect. The romance and the plot was so unique and so interesting, and it definitely caught my attention. I did listen to this on audiobook, so I would recommend the audiobook. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. The next thing was the tandem read of Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn in the Throne of Glass series. This is a reread, so I'm a little bit biased when talking about this. This was the first time I've done the tandem read though, so that was definitely interesting. Took a while to get through it. I really struggled to... My reading time had to be really intentional, and I really had to sit down and pay attention. I used the tabbing method, and I definitely got confused with what chapters. I had to constantly look at the guide that I had saved on my phone, so that is something to be cautious of. Did it affect the storyline? Probably not. They are separate storylines, but they're happening at the same time. So would I have really known if I hadn't checked and just went off of the tabs, probably not. Tower of Dawn is a 4-star read for me, and then Empire of Storms is that 4.5. I really enjoy them. I really love these characters. Have I gone on to read Kingdom of Ash yet? No. Like I said, this is a reread. I do know what I'm getting myself into. I just needed a little bit of a break before I finish off the series. I'm probably going to read it in October, but we'll see how we go. The next was Wildcard by Elsie Silver. I loved this. This was a 4.5 star read for me. I love Elsie Silver. I have now read everything that she's got out. This is the last installment in the Rose Hill series. Wild Eyes was my favorite, and then Wildcard is my second favorite in the series. If you want me to go deeper into the Elsie Silver universe, my favorites, and the reading order, I can do a separate video on that. I would love to help you out. Definitely loved it. Bash, probably one of my favorites. Gwen was incredible. I can relate to her so much. She is a yoga teacher and she is brand new to Rose Hill. I was very wary going into this book because it is ex-boyfriend's dad. So I was like, oh, I don't really know how I feel about that. Like a bit of an age gap, like it's kind of intense. But the way that Elsie Silver went about this was very nuanced, and it was very incredibly well done and unique within the trope. There's not a lot that you can do within certain tropes and certain liberties that you can take, but she's done it really, really well. Next was Time of Your Life by Jessa Hastings. I did read this physically, just my friend has the copy, has my physical copy for this, so photo here. This was a 3-star read for me. I do really enjoy Jessa Hastings. The Conditions of Will is my favorite book of hers, so I was really had high expectations going into this, but it was just a little bit of a letdown. I'm not gonna say too much. This is going back in time. This does take place in the 90s. I knew I was going to have an interesting time when the first couple of pages there is a glossary of slang terms, and for it not to be a fantasy book, it is a contemporary book that happens in the real world. It happens in London of, the mid-90s, and there's a glossary. So it was like, okay, what are we getting ourselves into? It takes place between this model and this rock star. Yeah, I just had higher expectations. It was probably the messiest Jessa Hastings book that I've read. I've read all of Magnolia Parks, and I've read The Conditions of Will. I haven't read her Peter Pan book. It kind of fell flat. It was 3 stars. It was okay. Will I continue on with this series? I don't know. But next was The Gingerbread Bakery by Laurie Gilmore. This is the 5th book in the Dream Harbor series. The Dream Harbor interconnected standalones is something that I'm reading as kind of like filler books. They don't have a super intense plot. They're pretty tropey, which I love. I love wholesome small town romance, interconnected standalones, like I've already said. Is it something that I'm going to recommend for everyone? Probably not, but if you want a cute little wholesome small town romance, like an interconnected standalone series, like read them, definitely go ahead. Like I'm not going to say don't read them, but this is the most anticipated couple. This is a second chance romance, and I don't love second chance romance. Usually, if it doesn't work out the first time, there's a good enough reason, but without saying too much, I think it's okay. I think she got around that pretty well, really well, with the alternating timelines of going back to the past, and we learn about what had happened, the first time around to this time around. So I did like those flashbacks because the whole book takes over a 4-day timeline over a wedding weekend. But yeah, 3.5 stars. It was okay. It was alright. Next was Arcana Academy, 4.5 star read for me this month. I really enjoyed it. I was recommended this book by someone in a bookstore. She told me to read it, and I read it, and I am going to thank her for the rest of my life. It was really, really good. It is in such an interesting magic system. This again starts off with the female main character in jail, and she gets broken out. She escapes, she gets out, and she goes into this deal with the head of Arcana Academy. And the magic system is all around tarot cards. So if you know nothing about tarot cards, there are 4 different suits of swords, wands, cups, Oh my god. Swords, cups, wands. What's the fourth one? Coins and coins. And each different card gives her a different power, and they all are learning about the different powers. But you are only allowed to use the tarot cards if you have gone to Arcana Academy. And she was caught using tarot cards illegally, so she's in jail. And then she gets into the Arcana Academy and she kind of has to hide that she really knows what she's doing and she's really good at it. The love story was incredible. I really enjoyed it. This is the first book in the series and it's the only one out, and I cannot wait for the second one and for the rest of the series. If you want a fantasy book that is not quite like all of the other fantasy books, definitely give this one a try. What Happens in Amsterdam by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is a standalone romance, contemporary romance, where our female main character ups her life and moves to Amsterdam on a whim and accidentally reconnects with her childhood love. He was a foreign exchange student and accidentally bumps into him, and it is a marriage of convenience. And yeah, like she did really well within working in the marriage of convenience story. I am always very hesitant of marriage of convenience because surely there's something else that could have been done. Like, why just jump straight to marriage? But for this particular reason, our female main character needs a visa. He wants to inherit his childhood home, and there is a condition in the inheritance that he must be married. So they decide to get married, and it's very, very cute. The authors either spent a lot of time in Amsterdam because it felt like I was there with her. Like, the descriptions of the place was beautiful, and then the whole plot and the characters' depth was really enjoyable as well. I loved some of the side characters. I could definitely see how they could have their own books and how she could potentially set them up for that. But it was only published this year, so maybe we might be getting more. We're not quite sure yet. The next book I read was Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. I listened to this as an audiobook just whenever I had some time. You know, if you know Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, you know, it follows the trials and the tribulations of a recently widowed main character, and she kind of, you know, has to navigate through life and everything that entails in that. You know, and then obviously, like, Jane Austen talks a lot about societal, like, matters in a time that's still are relevant to today, about, like, marriage and status and money. You know, it obviously is a classic. Not everyone is going to love reading classics, and that's totally fine. And then we read A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly, which is the first book, The Compelling Fates Saga. This was 4.5 stars. This takes place as our half-fae Alicia. She has been banished to this other world where half-fae are, you know, outcasts. They're not really respected. People look down on them by full-fae and then humans as well. And she has this blood oath to the king due to some time that she spent in jail. I read so many books this month where the female main character has spent time in jail. I don't know what it was, but I'm just like, this has happened like 3 times now. She has this blood oath to the king, and then the king tells her that she must go into the trial to become the next prime minister of this island, this realm. And she is sent to kind of spy on what's going on. And this is not just like an ordinary, you know, election. They have to do trials, and it's got some of that, like the trials that we get in a lot of fantasy books, but with more of a politics side to it. They are choosing to go into there, and they're choosing to go into these trials, but everyone else is choosing, but our female main character is not. So she kind of navigates through that. It was really, really interesting. 4.5 stars. I have already, future jump, I have already read the second book, yet read the third. I think it will go on further. So this definitely is a first book in the series where I was left with a lot of questions, was really interested to know what was going on. Really good, and I listened to it as an audiobook. Quite enjoyable as an audiobook. The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park. This is a translated piece by the Japanese author Michiko Amuro. I have read their first book, Everything You Need to Know is in the Library. I have both really enjoyed these. They are such interesting think pieces. I think the way that they write these short little stories is incredible, all based around a key element. And for this particular one, it is a healing hippo in this park, this children's park. And the writing is so concise. Yeah, it's just so interesting. I don't know how many times I've said interesting in this video, but I'm sorry, but I read books that I like and I want to find them interesting. This was 4.5 stars. Pride and Prejudice was the Audible original, the dramatized version of Pride and Prejudice, so it was about 4 hours long. First of all, I love Pride and Prejudice. It is, you know, the movie, my favorite. The yearning, I loved it, and the characters, the actors did such a good job with this. I really felt like I was listening to a movie, but it was 4 hours long. The dramatized version, if you've never listened to a dramatic audio, is that the actors will only say the lines instead of a normal audiobook narration where they'll say what they're doing and she said and he said this, and will say the line and how they're saying it and say some of the thoughts. They just kind of said the lines and the dialogue of the character, and then everything else was acted out using actual sound. So you heard a door opening, you heard chairs scraping on the ground. The way that she was able to differentiate between what she was actually saying and then her inner monologue was incredible. She did a really, really good job. And then the next was, of course, the second book in the Compelling Fates saga, A Promise So Bold and Broken. I've already kind of spoken about it when I spoke about the first one, but I could have stopped after the first one, but I decided to listen to the second one, and now I'm so invested in this story. I definitely think the second book was able to explore the world building so much more intensely. The romance just took on a whole new turn and was so incredible, and I loved the romance. I love the love interest. I don't want to say too much because I feel like you really need to go into some of this blind, but I loved it. I am so eager and desperate for the next one. I did listen to these on audiobook, like I've already mentioned, but the audiobook isn't out yet, but it is available on Kindle. Hi, Sylvie. You can see my little cat. We're just gonna have her in the background. I'm so sorry about that. You know, I'm so invested. I really want to read the third one, so I am going to read that on my Kindle. Definitely would recommend the series. I am definitely interested to see how much more she can possibly expand and how much more she can take the storyline. This, you know, a lot of fantasy books can either go in two different ways. They can be very political and have different wars and have all of the politics side to a story, or they can just be so character focused where war and combat and, you know, they have all these powers but they don't really need to use them too much. This is definitely taking on the side of the first, is that it's definitely, we're talking about kings, we're talking about alliances, we're talking about, you know, the blood oath to the king. Yeah, definitely enjoying it. So that was the 14 books that I read in August. No, that I read in September. I can't believe it's October already. Can we just talk about that for a second? Where the hell did this year go? So we are now in October. So excited to keep reading this month and see what I get into for October. But that is everything that I read in September. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of my content, please subscribe, like. If you have reached to the end of this video, if you are still watching, please drop a love heart emoji just so I can see who's still here. Thank you so much. I will see you in my next video. Bye.